That's not it. Hold on, I think it's like the one right above it. Yeah. So you can hear the reference to these different places in Africa in Puerto Rico, and you know it's Puerto Rico, you hear them say Puerto Rico, you hear the barriles, the bomba drums in the background. They're referencing, they're making fun of somebody. It's a song that says, you know, your mom is Conga, she's from the Congo, your dad is Calabari, like, and you don't even know how to talk like them. Like you've been in Puerto Rico too long. But it shouldn't be that way. Moving right along the coast, and this is one of the ladies that I mentioned earlier. We have, at the very top, we have a descendant of a singer from an area called San Mateo Congregos. Today, most people, in reference to that area, understand it as Santurce. It was renamed. It was the first black town started by free blacks on a Caribbean island, and it was started right in Puerto Rico. And it was such a well-functioning town that the Spanish colonizers dismantled it in the 1860s. So from the 1770s until the 1860s, it thrived. And Carmen Paris Cruz, she has one of these last names, De La Cruz, which is one of these original families of this town. And she was a singer in the area that we know today as Santurce, but was actually part, and for those of us who are trying to resist against that colonized history, and I encourage you as often as you can when you hear the word or the name Santurce, that you instead choose to call it San Mateo de Congregos. To acknowledge that history of that free black town. So this maternal line of Carmen Paris Cruz, her name did not survive kind of in the oral history of Bomba, but her husband's name did, and his name was Ethnogenesis. There's several songs that mention her husband, who was a drummer. She was a singer, she's documented as such, she's just not remembered very well. This is one of her descendants. Again, we did haplogroup testing, so it's that direct maternal line. And her, Carmen Paris's direct maternal line goes back to the Tikar people of Cameroon. Just below that, we have the descendant of La Bonchinella. Do you remember I said that there was another dancer who goes down in history as being very important? La Ponchinella, in the oral history of Bomba, is most well remembered. She was a dancer, but she's most well remembered for challenging this tradition in Bomba that only men interacted with the drum. I've heard other reports in other parts of the island that other women dance too. So I don't take that away from those women and their stories. But her name is the one that's remembered in Bomba for having done this. And so her name was La Ponchinella. She was born at the end of the 1890s. She had a son who was a bombero, and they were also from San Mateo de Congregos. I've done her genealogy as I've done Carmen Cruz's, and while she was born in San Mateo de Congregos, her mom was not. Her mom was born in the Virgin Islands. And so tracing that maternal line, I've gotten that maternal line back to St. Croix, or in Spanish we say Santa Cruz. So St. Croix. So that maternal line, sometime before St. Croix, went back to, and then look at all these people, their maternal line is a direct genetic match to the Bubi people of Bioko Island, which is a small island, or is an island that pertains to Equatorial Guinea, and the Tikar people, the Hausa, and the Fulani of Cameroon. So we've got Guinea-Bissau, we've got the Brahmin of Guinea-Bissau, we've got the Mende of Sierra Leone, we have so far the Yoruba and the Urhobo of Nigeria. You know, these are people in Bomba, whether it's because somebody like me who came to Bomba with no recent family connection, or other people who have had uninterrupted lines, like the Cepeda Brenas family have had uninterrupted participation in Bomba.
I want to say something about Bioko Island.
Okay.
For those that know poetry, from Luis Palek Matos, he has a poem that mentions Fernando Po. Fernando Po, many people believe is a person, but it's not. Fernando Po was the name that was given to that an island near the coast of Africa, and Fernando Po is Bioko Island. If you actually look in Google Maps and you put Fernando Po with 2 O's at the end, Fernando Po is Bioko Island.
Fernando Po, Bioko Island. Dima Sanchez says that Luis Pales Matos, who was from Guayama, where Doña Salome was from, wrote a poem that mentions Fernando Po, and that's actually a reference to Bioko Island.
To Bioko Island.
So we've got now all the way to Bioko Island, Cameroon, this area. And you can see here on the map, just to the north and to kind of the upper left part of the screen, that's Nigeria. You see the little island there, that's Equatorial Guinea. To the right, there's Cameroon. We have several now bomberas, women, whose lines, one from San Mateo de Congregos, first free black town on a Caribbean island, the other from another Caribbean island, St. Croix, and their lines both go back to this country, Cameroon. Now we're rounding out our list, and then we'll hopefully have some questions. We've got some other participation. We're gonna show you one of those descendants is here, Barbara, to show us some bomba, some ancestral bomba, and what it looks like today. So here we're ending with Rafael Cepeda Tiles. We just released, I have done his genealogy, and again, been working with the family for over a decade now on this genealogical research, which I've shared in many different forums over the last couple years. But Barbara went and got a DNA test behind my back, and then called me a couple weeks ago and said, Melanie, I've got results. And so she loves surprises, so she surprised me a couple weeks ago. We released that information just yesterday. So if you haven't seen it, if you're on the live, if you're here in person, you'll hear it maybe even before a lot of people haven't had a chance to see the video. Watch the video, it's just about an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. So we match up the genealogical work, that history that I have with the DNA results that she just got. And you'll see the actual DNA process where they're extracting the DNA. But Don Rafael Cepeda Tiles, also he was from San Mateo de Congregos. His paternal line, so far, we have it to Loíza, which is on the northern coast now. And we're still digging, and we hope to continue finding more generations. But when the records ended, just like with all these other families I work with, we go to the DNA evidence to see if it can take us further back than what the records can tell us. And so just yesterday, we announced that the paternal line of the Cepeda Brenes family goes back to the Fang, which Eric mentioned in his presentation, and the Benga people of Gabon. In Gabon, do you see that little square on the top of Gabon? That is Equatorial Guinea. And just above the Gabon is Cameroon. So you can see all these bomberos. They come from, and we don't have a lot of duplicates yet. But we're seeing that they really just are from all over. Now, Equatorial Guinea and Gabon are not West Africa. So that's part of the narrative that we have to change in Bomba, is saying that, and the African diaspora, is that we're from West Africa only. We're not only from West Africa, we're from the entire continent. Our ancestors came from many places on the continent. But we can see here that the Cepeda line goes back to the Fang and Benga people of Gabon, which is Central Africa. So I love showing this, and this is for haplogroups. They did a huge DNA study in Puerto Rico over 20 years ago, and 60-some-odd% of people have a mitochondria, which is a maternal DNA that goes back to First Nations people. But 27.2% of the mitochondrial DNA tested, or the maternal lines tested, went back to Africa. Now, Barbara, do you remember your haplogroup?
Mm-mm.
I do.
Yeah.
Well, I do. I remember it from when I looked it up yesterday. So the Mende from Sierra Leone, and that maternal line, the Brenes Lusunaris line, is L2C. Now you can see of the different Caribbean, of the you know the Caribbean, there are the Greater Antilles and the Lesser Antilles, and it's really about the landmass. And so Puerto Rico is the smallest of the Greater Antilles. So that's what you see here, the Greater Antilles. And you can see of all the Greater Antilles, Puerto Rico has the smallest percentage of African blood, African ancestry. If the Cepeda line, now, so it's all the way on the right-hand side of the screen. For those of you looking online, those of you who are here, Puerto Rico's two bubbles are on the right-hand side of the screen. And so the bottom circle shows the percentage of DNA. So 61.3% is First Nations, Taino, pre-Taino, or Arcaico, and then there are other First Nations groups from other parts, and that's a whole other presentation. But the large majority of people from Puerto Rico, I'm one of those. My haplogroup is First Nations. Haplogroup A2K1, that's mine. So the blue quadrant is the African maternal DNA. Now, if we look at the circle up at top, that is a breakdown of the 27.2%. By color, if you're trying to find Barbara's maternal haplogroup L2C, you don't even see it because it is so rare in Puerto Rico that it falls in that 8% that is shaded white, other haplogroups, because it's such a small percent. Well, actually, no, it would actually be under. It's not even in the 8%. It's so rare in Puerto Rico that it does not even appear on the breakdown of African maternal haplogroups in Puerto Rico. So I just love this because it's a wonderful way. I've been testing so many different families. We've been able to look at this to see how prevalent their maternal haplogroup is in Puerto Rico. Barbara's is extremely unique. That's it for me. Thank you. We're gonna take some questions. I know, do we wanna take questions now? Do you want to go on to the next?
Do you have any questions online or
Do
here?
we have any questions
No,
online?
I don't see any questions online.
Okay. I'm looking online, so if you have a question, type in your question. And we'll answer online. I'm sorry if you had questions earlier. But if you have a question that wasn't answered earlier, can you just retype it?
Any questions in the room?
Any questions in the room? So, that's okay, follow up if you like, you can, hold that, we're going to, this is a lecture demonstration, so you have a treat. You get to see a descendant of the Mende people of Sierra Leone, here of the most well-known Bomba family on the planet, the Cepeda family. Barbara has all of these wonderful layers that, she represents. You want the mic?
Huh?
Should I give you the mic? No? You just gonna play?
Yeah.
His microphone, we are not even gonna need a microphone. So Dimas is about to play, he's on the barrilla, if you wanna switch the camera so we can see Dimas. I'm watching myself on the phone.
Can I add something?
Yep, Eric's gonna talk.
One of the interesting things that comes out of all this research for me is getting the dates correct. I think everyone who is of African descent comes from a mixture of peoples who found themselves formerly enslaved but now freed. And as they are becoming freed people, they are trying to figure out who they are, because they're no longer from Africa. They're from Puerto Rico, they're from Texas, they're from Mississippi, they're from South Carolina. And some of them know who their African forebears were, but most of them are experiencing, coming from this blend of peoples. And as they're becoming free, they're trying to figure out who they are. Are they gonna be Boricuas? Are they gonna be Texans? Are they gonna be Mississippians? And out of this mix, they come together to take these elements from their past and to put them together to create an entirely new interpretation of culture. So when I see Bomba, I see the results of centuries of Africans living in Puerto Rico. And you'll notice that the dresses, or the skirts, look like colonial dresses. But for the practitioners of Bomba, they weren't wearing colonial dresses. They're going back to that time when they first became themselves. And the dance represents who they became as a people who are from Africa, but no longer African. In Puerto Rico, but a different type of Puerto Rican. And every movement, every sound, every blend, we use words like creolization and syncretization, but the real word that I'm in love with is the idea of ethnogenesis. Because you're not seeing European and African coming together. You're seeing a mix of various African cultures coming together to reshape who they are in a new environment. And they're not using African drums, they're using